Hello, I am Enrique Quesada, and this is the Judy Leigh Allen Mexico-centered podcast from the Center for the United States and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. According to the World Bank, Mexico is the second largest economy in Latin America and is in the top 15 largest economies in the world. However, its average annual growth rate between 2010 and 2018 was 2.8%, before a contraction of 0.1% in 2019. Despite this, investors see in Mexico a fruitful market. According to Endeavor, a non-governmental organization promoting entrepreneurship around the world, there were only 2 venture capital funds in Mexico in 2008 with $40 million in capital commitments. There are now 25 funds, and capital commitments amount to more than $1 billion. What is the present and the future of entrepreneurship in Mexico? What economic sectors are the most promising for businesses to scale up? How has the economic downturn caused by the coronavirus pandemic impacted entrepreneurial efforts? To answer these and other questions, I called Vincent Speranza, the managing director of Endeavor Mexico. Here's our conversation. Vincent Speranza, managing director of Endeavor Mexico, thank you for accepting the invitation to be on the podcast.
Thank you for the invitation.
So I am excited to talk to you today because I feel like in the last few years, I've begun to hear more and more about being an entrepreneur and entrepreneurship in Mexico. And I think for some people, it's to the point that for some people, it's a joke almost, like everybody's now an entrepreneur. So just to kind of start on the right foot, can you tell me a little bit more about what venture capital is and what the role of Endeavor Mexico is in promoting entrepreneurship in Mexico?
Yeah, sure. And I think I can start with the story of the Mexican entrepreneurial ecosystem, because as you said, now it's a hot topic, but it wasn't like that 2 decades ago when we launched Endeavor in Mexico in 2002. And I remember I joined early Endeavor in Mexico 15 years ago. So I remember an ecosystem very different where Endeavor was mostly like an evangelist about entrepreneurship. And I remember that we were talking about to the society, why should the country needs more entrepreneurs and better entrepreneurs? And I remember going with universities, public policies, and trying to convince the society that universities, for example, they don't need only to produce the next generation of managers, directors, but also thinking about putting like a kind of DNA about entrepreneurship in the students, public policies to say, look, we need to have an entrepreneurship focus to attend a new generation of innovators. And at that point, we were quite alone on the ecosystem, no, talking about entrepreneurship and trying to make the country a little bit more aware about the importance about entrepreneurs. And nowadays, like 20 years after that, as you said, it's kind of a joke, no? Any young guy has a MacBook in a Starbucks, well, pre-COVID, no? Seems to be an entrepreneur. Any kind of free spaces is named a co-working. Any rich family guys have a family office. So we kind of pass from zero to too much, I think. And I think it's every time when you launch something new, you have to recalibrate, no? And in a few years, it will be in the middle. But I think it's really interesting how the evolution of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. At the very beginning, entrepreneurs were self-made and men only running businesses, more in traditional sectors like retail, food and beverage. So there were not any kind of tech companies in the ecosystem. And if you compare, for example, to Argentina, that had Mercado Libre, Globant at the very beginning of this time, in Mexico, we didn't have this kind of entrepreneurs. And I think in Mexico, we had 2 interesting changes during these 2 decades. And one is when Linio, who was the first marketplace in Mexico, it's a rocket internet company, like this German company builder. And they came with they studied the market and said, there is a room for marketplace, for e-commerce. And I think the assumptions were perfectly right. But when they launched the marketplace, something was missing, and it was talent with tech and tech skills. And so what did Linio was they needed to bring to Mexico a lot of people with those kind of skills. And to me, it's the beginning of having in Mexico people with technical skills that they learn from Linio how to do UX, UI, any kind of digital marketing, issues on platform payment, on delivery. And if you study Linio, you can now map that there is almost 100 startups that began their journey into Linio and then jump out and create what we call like the PayPal mafia that you have in the US could be the Linio mafia in Mexico to bring this talent to Mexico. And now we are seeing a new phase of entrepreneurs. We are seeing teams of co-founders, not only lonely travels. No, it's more like teams are working. We are seeing a lot more female entrepreneurs coming with being co-founder of the teams or leading their own companies. Almost every new companies that we are seeing are tech-enabled, so they take all the technology have a way to scale and to really have success on the industries. So it has been really interesting how we've seen a change on the face of the entrepreneurs in Mexico lately. And with that, you have obviously the venture capital being an important part of this. No, at the beginning there were no really venture capital in Mexico because there were not such bet on the high growth and exponential growth companies. And with the starting point of tech companies, we had more interest of venture capital. Also, we had in Mexico an important piece of the public policy to try to have more venture capital in Mexico. And I think it came naturally, and now we have. I think it's for Mexico, as you said, it's a very interesting time because Mexico was disappointing if you compare to other economies on entrepreneurship and innovation and technology. And now you have a huge market, you have talent, you have a new generation of entrepreneurs, and you still have a huge country with a lot of issues to solve. And we believe that entrepreneurs and high impact entrepreneurs are the best way to solve those problems into our society. So it's a very special moment. And for example, if you take a look to the recent round of investment that we have in Mexico, Kavak was the first unicorn a few months ago. Then you have Justo just launched a $65 million round, being the first online supermarket in Mexico with only 16 months of operation. You have Bitso in the crypto space that also raised the $62 million round. You have Albo, the first digital bank, also raising significant amount of money. So you kind of seeing that those entrepreneurs who started 4-5 years ago with conditions that are a bit hostile on the way that it was difficult in Mexico, now they captured the attention of local VCs, but also US and worldwide and regional investors to see that Mexico is really the great point to invest in entrepreneurship.
So you said that before the role of Endeavor seemed to be of evangelizing, right, and trying to say we need more entrepreneurship. And now that there seems to be a lot of people who want to start or who have a startup maybe, what is now the role that Endeavor takes? Is it, I've heard you talk about like mentorship, but also is it access then to this venture capital that they may use to scale up?
Yeah, so the mission of Endeavor is we are really mission driven because our mission is in Mexico is to transform Mexico. This is the mission. And the way we are doing this transformation of Mexico is through finding and scaling the best entrepreneurs that we have. And we're completely agnostic around industries, gender, age, and everything. So we believe that high impact entrepreneurs, and I will define what is high impact entrepreneurs, are the best way to transform economies because they create wealth that they distribute better than anyone. They create jobs, but something very important, they create local stories that kind of motivate the next generation to say, if these guys, if Carlos from Kavak and Roger and Lori could make a unicorn in Mexico in only 4 years, why shouldn't be able to do that? So it creates like this kind of inspiration and role model, which is very important to build ecosystem. No, and what does Endeavor is looking for those promising companies and promising entrepreneurs in fintech, agtech, edtech, mobility, health. So we are looking every time for those entrepreneurs. And once we select the entrepreneurs, so we help them with access to capital, access to market, because Endeavor is present in 40 markets. We help them with access to talent, also to build tribes and cultural tribes in their own companies. We help them. Recently, we had a new service around access to well-being, because we believe it's really tough to become an entrepreneur, and we need to address and to attend like the individual behind the venture. And at the end, we are doing that because we believe that if those entrepreneurs become successful, they create a multiplier effect. And once they achieve success, and we're very ambitious on success, we define success by being a unicorn, doing an IPO, raising around major of $100 million, of doing an exit major of $100 million. So we're really the last mile of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're not focused on startup. We're focusing and obsessing about scale up. Now, which is those company with entrepreneurs maybe is launching its second or third ventures. It's not this young guy, fresh, recently graduated from the school. It's someone that have more years on the field, more scarves. We love scarf because we believe it's experience on the road, and we help them to get successful. No? So this is a little bit our mission, and at the end, the help that we give to the entrepreneur, it's really because we want them to become like new role model, new mentors, and new investors in the ecosystem. So we build those role model in Mexico.
What kinds of economic activity have you seen are most ripe in Mexico, or what kind of industries are entrepreneurs best flourishing in?
Sure. So the first one, and it's kind of obvious, it was fintech, and why fintech?
And that's financial tech.
Yeah, financial tech. Yeah. So traditional financial sector in Mexico is pretty awful. No, so many people are underbanked in Mexico. They don't have access to credit. They don't have access to financial inclusion. So if you want to build a new tech economies, you need to start with the first one, which is financial technologies. Because if you want to have an e-commerce industry, people need to have online payment. If you want to have mobility with sharing economies, you need to have people to have access with their cell phone to can have access to new services. It's normal that it started with financial technology, what fintech as we call it. So fintech was the very first industries that been disrupted by high impact entrepreneurs, and then this one enabled a lot of other industries like commerce, and we've seen in COVID like growth in e-commerce delivery. Even in B2B or B2C, it has been amazing how our companies in online have been growing like crazy, because COVID didn't make the digital transformation a reality. It just make it more quick and more urgent that we needed to address. I think edtech also is booming in Mexico, because I don't know if you know that, but since March of last year, schools are closed. So we need to the one who have kids in our home, we need to have them entertained and educated. So technology, it's also a great platform to maintain education. So if you see, the technology has been important to navigate this moment of the pandemic situation, and I think the next generation of entrepreneurs, one will be insurtech. All this technology around insurance, because I think insurtech is the new fintech. You can apply a lot of technology, algorithm, and solutions that has been successful in financial technology to the insurance technology, because it has the kind of same issues on regulation, on how to go to the last client. I think in Mexico, for the nature of the country, travel tech will be another disrupted soon economies, because Mexico is they have a very important economy on tourism, and now tourism is practically not deaf, but very different. So we need to readdress, and technology will be important on travel. So I guess it will be the next two generation of next verticals that we will see the next generation of high growth in Mexico.
So according to the World Bank, Mexico is one of the 15 largest economies on the planet and the second largest in Latin America. However, economic growth has remained at around 2%, and it has slowed down quite a bit even before the pandemic hit, right? So I'm wondering, how does this impact the ability to grow a business, to grow a startup, for example, and create these larger firms? And also, a new administration took over at the end of 2018, and President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is not known for being fond of the business sector. And so I wonder how these political and economic changes impact Endeavor's ability to support entrepreneurs and also entrepreneurship itself.
Yeah. So two things. The first one, I guess, and history have made it very clear that when economies turn down, economy turns up, because the entrepreneurs are completely contra-cycle regarding the economy. So normally when the economy turns down, it's a really special moment for entrepreneurs to turn up. So when you said about even before Andrés Manuel López Obrador government, the economy was declining, and we were seeing the first rise of entrepreneurs. No, so it's kind of normal when you have crashing the economies. It's always here that the new entrepreneurs are born, because there is a special moment when you have the economy a little bit slowing down. No, so entrepreneurs are always in the other cycle of the economy. So for that, it's a great moment for the economy, but it's a tough moment for the country. As you said, I think we can divide into different topics. The one is the sanitary part of Mexico. COVID is really frightening in Mexico. I mean, the excess of deaths is amazingly high if you compare to other countries. Testing is really low. There is no such like a government who took actions to make it very, very clear. Should we lock down? Should we open the economy? We are really in between, which is really confusing for the people. But what we've seen that the society reacted and said, okay, even if the government is not saying that we shouldn't be closing the companies or being remote, we all did that because we said we need to take care of our employees, of the well-being, and make sure that people is staying really safe at home. So everyone is doing practically this kind of actions. But the economy is going really down. Last numbers said that we had a report of 8.5% of the GDP that going down last year, which is one of the most affected country. If you compare, I think US was 4.3, Europe is 3.45%, but they already have a path to growth that make that in the next 8 to 11 months they will recover what they've lost on the GDP last year. In Mexico, we don't have any numbers that can address this recuperation in the next 2 years. So it makes it really complicated. We are seeing unemployment as a really strong issue in Mexico because there is no social coverage around unemployment. So you have a lot of families that have lost at least one person on their jobs. When you dig into the data, it seems really frightening that 70% of unemployment in Mexico came into the women part, which is terrible on the gender equality, because you have if you have 2% having a kind of job, who is the one who is the most highly for the family? It's the men. So the women has to stop their jobs, take care of the kids because there is no school. So there is a lot of implications that in the long term, I'm really afraid about the social and the security that we have in the country, because it's a tough part. So the economy is complex, but on your question on entrepreneurship, we are seeing the best ecosystem that we've never seen, because it's it's, as I said, it's a different cycle that we've seen on entrepreneurship. So it's really different. And I'm being a little bit bipolar, because on some ways I'm seeing the economy, I'm seeing the reality of Mexico. Also, you have to see that there is 2 or 3 Mexicos. No, one is Mexico City, one is the entrepreneurship, the innovators, and the rest of the country is not as privileged as we see. So it's tricky to define where it can go, but for sure it's challenging. And I think that economics and social issues are really tight. No, if you have wealth in the economic part, normally socially you can have some more solutions. And now I think we're in a complex moment in Mexico.
Yeah, and as you said, it seems like with the pandemic and everybody, or a lot of people working from home, new technology, we had to adapt to new technologies, right? And it seems like this is, at least on the bright side, if we can have one on the bright side, we can see entrepreneurship in that area.
Yeah, sure. Everything changed. I mean, the way we consume content, the way we interact, no, it's not only on Zoom, Meets, Teams, name it. No, it's really different. But I think, as you said, also it brings a lot of new opportunities. And I think every people that think that when it will be over, and nobody really knows when, it will back to a reality. I think it's completely different. The reality will be really different. There is some changes that are permanent. And for example, I'm seeing a lot of on the mobility and the way to adapt to the cities. I think we are facing a huge change that has a lot of collateral changes. For example, Mexico City is a huge city, very complex, high traffic. It's a chaos. I don't know if you've been there, but it's a terrible
I love
chaos.
it, but yes.
Exactly. So, and because it was designed that live where you work, no, if you can afford it, no. And what we are seeing, a lot of people that are seeing that they can work in another place. They can work further than they were before the pandemic. So it's changed completely the distribution of where we are going to live, how we are going to live. And so what we need to adapt more technology and new technologies into our house to have access to new infrastructure to can address that. It means that we can have more balance on families and business or studying and other topics. And also all these kind of changes, it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs, because if you can understand the new changes, if you can anticipate the changes, and if you can put you into the mindset of the next consumers, you can address a very good solution for the next post-pandemic world. No, I'm positive. I think we need to have vaccines. We need to end this strategy. But at the end, I think it will this pandemic makes a great reflection on how we live and why we live. And I think the purpose of our lives really changed after seeing all that we've seen during the last months. And I think it will have some positive impact in the next months, hopefully.
Well, Vincent Speranza, Managing Director of Endeavor Mexico, thank you for answering these questions and for this conversation.
No, I thank you for the invitation.
That was Vincent Speranza. That is it for this episode. Thank you for listening to the Judy Lay Allen Mexico-centered podcast. Thanks Luisa Huacata, our program manager, and Tony Payan, the director of the Center for the United States and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Special thanks to Judy Lay Allen for her generous support of the work we do at the center. You can visit our website at bakerinstitute.org/Mexico, where you can find our latest publications. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests and the host and do not necessarily reflect those of the center. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can email us at usmexicocenter@rice.edu. We would love to hear from you. Mexico Centered is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Spotify. You can subscribe through your favorite podcast app to receive all of our new episodes directly on your phone. I am Enrique Quesada. Stay safe, wear a mask, and I will see you next time.